Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's Katie Crysdale here from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. We will be starting this session in about 20 minutes. So typically what happens for those of you who've never been to one of these webinars before, we do a little bit of a pre-show, recapping what's been going on with the different POOLaide webinars, letting you know what's coming up later this week, coming up next week. That's kind of how the next 15-20 minutes roll. And our presenter today, Jamie Lopes, will be here a couple minutes after the hour, depending on your time zone. So if you can pop your location, your city, or your province or state in the chat box as you enter, that's really great. It allows our presenters to see where you are located. I recognize a lot of your names, but it's not always the case for our presenter, who will be able to scroll back and see who's here today. So thanks so much for joining me. I don't know if today's been the same for you, but this Monday morning felt like a shot out of a cannon. Just had to hit the ground running, a lot of different things going on. So I do appreciate you being here, because I know Monday can be a really tough sell, especially with a new week and things that you have to do. It's a lot. So thanks for being here. Let's talk a little bit about the sessions we had last week. If you weren't here last week, we had 3 excellent webinars. All of the recordings will go up on our YouTube channel as the editing is completed. I'm hoping to start getting those videos up later this week. We did have a small delay. Our video guy, he received an invitation to interview for medical school. So that was really exciting for him, and understandably added a delay last week as he was rushing to prep for that very important interview. So he's hoping to get caught up later this week, and I'm hoping we can get all of those recordings up on our YouTube channel. If you're not familiar with our YouTube channel, I will pop that in the chat box, and you can see all of the 2020 POOLaide webinars posted on our YouTube channel. And the same thing will be happening for this 2021 series. All of the webinars will be on our YouTube channel as soon as we can get those posted. So thanks so much, those of you entering your location in the chat box. I know some people, they like to lurk, and that's okay. But as we have people entering the room, we'll see who's who in the zoo, as it were. Just kind of see where you're located, see who we've got from across Canada and across the US. So let's look at last week. What did we have last week? Can't believe last week it's already blinked and it's happened. So last week on Monday, March 8th, we had Working with Different Generations in Aquatics. That was a session with Katie Crysdale from Loudoun County, Virginia. Katie Crysdale was here talking about how different generations exist in the workplace. We know that, whether it's our 16-year-olds all the way up to our 16-year-olds. And how do we navigate those disparities in the aquatic environment? So when we've got lifeguards and swim instructors, programmers, aquatic facility staff, operators, what does that look like in the workplace? And she gave a really excellent synopsis of the different generations and each of their expectations and their work styles. And so certainly we acknowledge that each person is an individual and we can't categorize everyone or paint everyone with the same brush. But I know that was a very, very enlightening session for me to understand what are some strategies we can implement in our different aquatic facilities. So that's a really great session that we had last week. That was Monday, March 8th. Then on Wednesday, March 10th, we had this session entitled Considerations for Aquatic Programs and Initiatives with Indigenous Communities. Now that session was with Dr. Audrey Giles from the University of Ottawa. She has been doing research in aquatic programs, swimming and water safety, specifically with Indigenous populations in Canada. So that's our First Nations communities. She's been doing that research for over 20 years. And she talked to us about some of the perspectives that we should have when we're teaching swimming lessons and teaching water safety. She looked a lot at the data of drowning rates across Canada and talked about how drowning rates are often not pegged to population. And so although the number of drowning fatalities in the province of Ontario is significant, it's not as high as the Northwest Territories when it's pegged to population. So she talked a lot about strategies for how we can improve water safety retention from kids through to adults. What are some misconceptions about teaching in different communities, cultural diversity, perhaps some white biases or white perspectives. So really, really interesting session that I know anybody can get value from, whether you are in a northern community in Ontario, northern community in the prairies, or whether you're in an urban area with limited Métis First Nations populations. It was really, really eye-opening. One of the things that stuck with me all week was she talked about how coroner reporting in Canada does not have any sort of category for race or ethnicity. It's guesstimated based on the patient's or the victim's name. And so when we are tracking fatalities in Canada, whether water safety or automobile or otherwise, we don't have an accurate representation of ethnicity, which was just kind of mind-blowing for me in 2021. So that was our session on Wednesday. And then on Friday, we had the session, Person-Centered, Person-Directed Approach to Recreation Programming. So that session was with two presenters from Regina, Saskatchewan. We had Shauna Reels and Alicia Andrusiak from Eden Care Communities, and they were here talking about seniors. Essentially, I wanted to make sure we covered a session this year on seniors, understanding that that is a huge and growing demographic of the recreation and aquatics industry. If you haven't noticed, a lot of these adult communities, these live-in communities, there's a ton of positions for recreation programmers, recreation facilitators. It's a really growing area of our industry, whether you've noticed it or not. But the challenges for programming somebody who's 60 or 70 or 80 or even 90, I love that they talked about, well, we've never been 60 or 70 or 80 or 90. What does that look like as a facility manager, a programmer, somebody who's trying to do outreach? Are we meeting the needs of people with different mobility limitations, cognitive limitations? And it's not to be overwhelmed and say, you know, we can't meet all their needs. We certainly can't, but we can better understand how to address people as individuals, ask them what their wants are, what their needs are, what accommodations we can make, because aquatics is not just about aqua fitness for seniors. There's a tendency for us to think that aquatic fitness classes are enough for our seniors populations, and that's just not the reality. One example I love that they shared was bingo, and how accommodating different needs with bingo, maybe people, they have hearing limitations, maybe they have visual acuity limitations. How do they adapt bingo for a wide range of needs in an audience? So really, really, really interesting sessions last week. I hope if you joined us last week for any of those sessions, let me know your thoughts in the chat box. Give a comment what your favorite session was, or if there's anything that you learned. Really appreciate kind of knowing how it landed for you. So let's see who we've got so far today. I see Chris is here from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Welcome. I see Christine is here from Las Vegas, Nevada. Bree is here from Coronado, California. Got a few others, so if you want to pop your location in the chat box. Our presenter will be starting in about 10 minutes, so just after the hour. We will have our presenter as well as some assistants in the chat box today. I'll be giving a full introduction for those of you who've never been to these webinars before. One of the things I do want to mention now, since you guys are early birds, catch the worm, is we do have amazing prizes today. So let me get some links in the chat box. I see Miranda is here from Kingston. Welcome, welcome. All right, let me put a link to Facebook and I'll talk about some prizes today. So today we have 3 prizes. They're all the same, but they're fabulous. So Water ID, which is a water testing company in Germany, they reached out to me maybe in January. They were interested in donating some prizes to webinar attendees. So they haven't paid any money. They're not a sponsor. I'm not receiving any compensation, but I do love one of their products. And I asked if that was the product that they would give away, and they've agreed. So today we're giving away to 3 live attendees, 3 full water test kits. So you can see the product that's being given away in the chat box. I've linked to the water test kit. Looks like this, comes in a nice case. Sorry, clearly my Vanna skills are not great. Comes in a case. It is a photometric test kit. So you add water basically to the testing chamber. And then you apply, these ones are pill-based, so there's little cartridges. And you can check your chlorine, your pH, all of your standard water testing levels. These retail for 425 Canadian. That's about $350 US, and they're giving away 3 today. So you can be anywhere in the world to enter. They will mail them to you directly from Germany. And yeah, I'm super excited because I love this test kit. It's a really great option when I fly because there's no liquids, obviously, with the little blister packs. You can read more details about the product in the review that I did a couple years ago. But essentially, if you want to be eligible today to win one of the 3 test kits that we have, you need to comment on the Facebook post today about the water test kit. So comment on Facebook post what excites you about the Pool Lab water test kit. And I will be picking people shortly after the webinar closes today, and it will be based on live attendance. Super, super exciting. Thank you to Water ID Germany. That's a huge prize, obviously $1,200. I particularly love this kit. Obviously, every facility can benefit from having an extra water test kit around. And yeah. So welcome to those of you who've been joining. We will be starting a few minutes after the hour. So in about 6 or 7 minutes, I'll be bringing our presenter on. If you've never been to a POOLaide webinar before, welcome. My name is Katie Crysdale, the owner of Lakeview Aquatic Consultants, and we run these free webinars throughout the month of March as a service to the industry, giving back, connecting people. Let us know in the chat box where you're located. It's really nice for our presenter to get a sense of geography. I want to talk a little bit about the sessions upcoming this week. So today we are going to be hearing from Jamie Lopes. He's going to be talking about who's responsible for what when it comes to renovation and different projects for pool construction. Later this week, Wednesday, we have Creating Service Magic with Joshua Koch from Strathcona County, which is Sherwood Park, Alberta. Josh is a fantastic speaker. I've heard him many times over the years. He's a really engaging, passionate customer service type of person. He's taking courses with Disney University. He's followed brands such as Starbucks, and he really is going to bring together some customer service strategies that you can implement at your aquatic facility. His presentations are just fun. He's really engaging, and I know he's excited to present in a virtual session because it's been a while since he's presented, so it's the best way to do this for right now. So if you are interested in joining us on Wednesday, I will pop a link in the chat box. As always, all sessions are free. We will have recordings up as soon as possible. Typically, we're looking now at about a week to 10 days to get those up on our YouTube channel. So if you do want the information right away, I do encourage you to register for the session coming up on Wednesday. Coming up on Friday this week, we are going to have a different type of session called Business Lessons from Outside of Aquatics. We're going to be hearing from Pam Wright, who is a vice president at Adobe. I've known her, 15 years now, basically. She's from Ottawa as well. I grew up in Ottawa, Ontario. She's going to be talking about some business lessons from outside of the aquatics industry. I find in the swimming pool industry, we get super limited in our perspective, and we need to consider lessons that we can take from outside of the swimming pool industry, from other trades, other vocations, and just think about running our swimming pool as a business. Even if we are a municipality, even if we are a nonprofit, it's still important to run the pool efficiently. And sometimes we get too far in the weeds, quite literally on process, and we need to zoom out and think about what's best for the facility, what's best for me as an aquatic professional, my career, what am I doing to advance my career to also advance my facility and my staff. So really excited to hear from Pam. You will see 2 people listed on the show notes for Friday, but I do believe we're only going to have the one. The other individual works in the biomedical field. And as you can imagine, with the COVID-19 pandemic, schedules are just not lining up the way we had hoped. So good morning. I see Sarah is here from Edmonton. Sarah was the prize winner on Friday of our Canadian Red Cross towel and giveaway package. So thanks to her for participating. I'm going to be talking about our presenter and giving him the opportunity to start the session in 1 or 2 minutes. So this is your last chance to run to the bathroom, grab some coffee, grab some water, say hello in the chat box, let us know your location. We've got lots of people lurking without letting us know. Just your location in Canada or the US is helpful to our presenter to have perspective on, even when I teach, for example, certified pool operator classes, I like to bring in some perspectives from across the country. So welcome. We've got Edmonton, we've got Elmer, Ontario, Charlottesville, Virginia, we've got Texas, lots of people ticking. Amy's here from Ontario, Patrick's here from Ontario, Jason from Minneapolis, Roy from Newmarket. So let's keep that chat box rolling with where you're located. You don't have to name your facility or your title, just your location is very, very helpful. Okay, let me do our introduction so our presenter can get going. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Katie Crysdale. I'm the owner of Lakeview Aquatic Consultants, and I appreciate you spending part of your Monday with us as part of this POOLaide webinar series. So today it is, I need to check my calendar. Today it is Monday, March 15th. And let me introduce our speaker for today. Our speaker for today is Jamie Lopes, and he will be discussing the session, Project Gaps, Who's Responsible for What? So Jamie Lopes leads the aquatic design and engineering at DEI and Associates Incorporated and brings 15 years of experience in aquatic systems design. Jamie has successfully completed and worked on major new facilities throughout Canada, as well as design for major renovations, smaller swim schools, and technical reports on issues at numerous facilities. His experience, knowledge, and abilities in the aquatic sector have resulted in Jamie being a well-connected and respected aquatic consultant throughout municipal and private sector. Jamie is also working with the Ministry of Health, updating the Ontario health regulations and the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance for future changes on the Certified Pool Operator Program delivery. On a personal level, when Jamie is not working on pools, Jamie can be found on the wrestling mat as a level 2 national coach for the Matman Wrestling Club in Kitchener, Waterloo, Ontario, as well as an avid scuba diver and dive instructor. Jamie's diving has taken him from checking on pools to shipwrecks in Tobermory and the coral and tropical waters, including the continental shelf off the coast of Honduras. So I want to say a big welcome to Jamie. You guys can give a welcome and a hello in the chat box. I also want to let everyone know that we do have Brittany is here as well in the chat box. So Brittany Aho is with the same organization, and she's going to be available in the chat box to moderate some questions if anything comes up. As always, for those of you who might be new to these POOLaide webinars, questions will be answered at the end. So if you have questions, do pop them in the chat box because I will be tracking them so Jamie can focus on his presentation. But if you do have anything that you want to add to the chat box kind of technically, you might get a direct message from Brittany, who is a colleague of Jamie, who will be able to provide more technical responses quickly than I'm going to be at the end for our Q&A. Okay, so let's do a quick audio check, Jamie, because I'm showing that you're still muted.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are.
Awesome. I'm going to go off screen and we'll say a big hello to Jamie.
All right, so thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know everybody's running around these days, and especially as the warmer weather starts to come around, getting hopefully outside more and more, and those of you who have some outdoor pools, trying to get them up and running, or at least prepare for those quickly. So without further ado, thank you very much, Katie, for allowing me to be here, and thanks for that great introduction. Here is my contact information up on the screen. Brittany and I are always available to answer any of your questions. The best way is obviously shooting us an email. For those of you who are on the call who know me personally, you can obviously get a hold of me on my cell phone. So it's great to see my friends from Halifax and out west as well, and even down in Minnesota. So great to be here, and let's jump right in. So a little bit about us, like Katie mentioned, we're a consulting firm. We've got no affiliation to any contractor or any one product. 8 years of water treatment for food and beverage before I joined Aquatics. So I've done stuff for Pepsi, Coke, Molson, Labatt's, Anheuser-Busch, even Volkswagen on their paint line. So that was an interesting project many years ago. Been in the aquatic industry for 15 years and have done everything from your Lifetime Fitnesses in the US and a couple here in Ontario to LA Fitnesses, Movati's, Gold's Gym, your YMCA's, your local community pools as well. Avid scuba diver, teach both open water all the way up to advanced, and shipwrecks, as well as the pool operational course for operating your pools. So what are we going to talk about today? Today we're going to look at very high level of who's responsible for what, right? And a lot of that comes down to who we're talking to in the industry, who our partners are, who's leading those decision-making processes. Is it the owner? Is it the contractor or the consultant, right? You want to have a team effort. You want to make sure everyone's on board with everything and on the same page. Really, it's your owner and your consultant who should be making those decision processes, especially once you get into a project. Even design build projects where it's a group of associated people from the contractor up to the owner, really the decision-making process should be engaged and directed by the owner, the one who's actually paying the bills. Okay, for your team, definitely who's the experience and knowledge of those people that you're bringing together on the team. How long have they been in the business? Have you checked their references? What does the internet say? What does the referral say? And general industry, what's their competitor saying? Right? There's nothing barring you from calling your competitor to say, hey, no, we didn't get the job, but I'm just looking for some background and reference checks, right? Other consultants, other architects who have worked with them, it's a good idea to check all the boxes and cover your bases when you're dealing with any contractor. So general terms, the pool industry terminology is backwards, right? So when I talk about a return, that's a return to the pool. Whereas a ventilation system, for example, the return is that ductwork going to the return system to that rooftop ventilation. So the pool is everything, so terminology is a little bit backwards. Depending on how the project is set up, your construction schedule and contract documents, Division 13 is typically your pool contractor or any sort of special contract construction. So your saunas, pools, water slides, features, splash pads, etc. That would all be under special construction. Division 15 or 23, depending on, again, specifications, if they're using the old specs or the new ones, right, it would be your mechanical. Division 16 and 26 is electrical. Typically, Division 3 is your concrete works in and around the pool. If you're doing a modular system, that would still fall under there. It may be broken into your special construction, but typically it still falls under your Division 3. And your Division 1 is your general contractor doing your front end stuff and everything else. Just some general terms for general knowledge. There's a lot of people on the call here, so not sure where everyone is as far as construction knowledge is concerned, but here's just some general terminology for what the industry takes, right? So supply is basically you're going to supply it. You've requested a piece of equipment and I'm supplying it to you. Installing it means you're going to install that piece of equipment. It may not necessarily mean that you've supplied it. It just means you're going to install it. Provide or furnish would be both. You're going to supply and install. Oops, one too many clicks. There we go. So who's responsible for what? So we're going to look at these 7 items: our water supply, where it's coming from, right? Our circulation system in and around the pool itself, the sanitary system, if there's storm, where that's going, some general items on electricity, our emergency equipment, and our finishes. Okay, so there's our main 7 topics we're going to look at. And again, this is all very high level, and we can get into details down the road. So the first thing is our water supply. Where is that domestic water coming from? Is it surface supplied? Is it wells? Is it river? In and around the GTA and the Horseshoe area, so Toronto, St. Catharines, etc., Niagara Falls. Is that water coming from Lake Ontario? Right. So where is that water really coming from? And what size is that line supplying? So that middle picture there is a 1/2-inch, very old water line from an actual private well that's being supplied to the pool. In order to fill that pool up, it's in a remote community. In order to fill that pool up, it takes about 3 weeks with that 1/2-inch line. So if we're in a rush to fill up our pool, that 1/2-inch line is not going to cut it. Right? The material itself as well, right? Most material now in around pools is PVC. So you can see in that bottom left-hand corner there, all our PVC piping. The one thing we want to be concerned about for our water supply is backflow prevention, right? So we want to ensure that the pool isn't backfeeding into our municipal water or well water, or feeding into the rest of the building. So we want to make sure that we've got backflow protection, right? Obviously the bottom right is a very large one. That's our main coming in. The one on the bottom left or the top right-hand corner is just kind of a blow up. That is your isolation backflow prevention specifically to the pool or a smaller unit. Circulation system. So this is all our piping in and around the pool, our mechanical systems as well, in our mechanical room. The pipe size and type, does it matter? Yes, it does. Our pipe size, depending on province or state, we have some people from the US here, so depending on state and jurisdiction, will determine what our flow rates, our maximum velocity of flow rates through that pipe. So we need to ensure that when we're sizing piping, it's sized in accordance with the jurisdiction, right? Piping schedule, that sizing will change based on the schedule. If I have schedule 40 versus schedule 80 pipe, for example. So all that is the thickness of the wall of that pipe. Schedule 80 is a higher number. It has a higher thickness. Tiger Flex or Spa Flex, so that's the flexible piping. It's not really meant for pools. There are no connections or fittings to take that Spa Flex or Tiger Flex fitting into a rigid connection. So it is a field item that's done with hose bibs or trying to glue it into a T or a pipe fitting. It's mostly for the residential market, but not used in commercial application. Okay. Our outdoor pools, right? What type of piping, especially in a colder climate? So I know I was talking to Katie a while ago about an installation in northern Alberta. Definitely colder climates. Schedule 80 pipe is preferred. The cost of a $3 million project and changing out from schedule 80 to schedule 40 to save $3,000 on a pipe is not great, right? You're better off spending that $3,000 insurance package and buying the thicker pipe of schedule 80. With our installations, regardless if it's outdoor or indoor, what type of soil conditions do we have, right? Especially in northern climates where we have some significant freeze and or freeze thaw. We definitely want to ensure our soil condition is appropriate for bedding or putting our pipes in, right? Our pipes should never be just left in the ground. They should be attached to the pool wall with pipe brackets or proper bedding or encased in concrete. But regardless of soil type, there should be a geoengineer to advise us on backfilling requirements, whether it's sand, whether the excavated material could be used. We could be on expansive soil that needs engineered fill. Once all our piping is done, a pressure test should be done. Okay, and the big question I always get is, can I pressure test with air? Because it's very quick. No, you cannot. Pressure testing with air is very dangerous. As a diver with that 3,000 PSI tank on my back, if something lets go, it's going to eject very quickly and very dangerously. So when we're pressure testing our pool piping, it's with water only. Okay, in winter conditions, obviously we have to put some water antifreeze or provide heating systems, heating blankets to keep it from freezing. But on every installation, you should be doing a pressure test. Even on doing a renovation, we should be doing a pressure test with water only and allowing that to sit for at least 24 hours while we do our tests. Here's a good example of what not to do, right? So here is, this is a renovation. We've got some black poly, it's HDPE piping, high density polyethylene piping, which is fairly rigid, okay? And we're trying to convert it to PVC because obviously the original line broke. There's the original line on the pool wall, and then there's our line going back to our filter system. Gear clamps don't work. Right? I can't compress two rigid items with gear clamps. Doesn't matter if I have 2, 4, 6, 100 gear clamps on here. Taking rigid pipe and trying to clamp it to another rigid pipe, this is just a potential for leak. The other problem is I've got what's called, in general terms, zebra piping. Right? I've got different materials, right, or different grades, and I'm trying to connect them all together. So ideally, this patch really should have been done as removal of the fitting in the wall, if possible. Sometimes that's not possible, but ideally, the instruction should have been remove the fitting completely and provide PVC all the way through, okay? Versus trying to Band-Aid one thing, because this is just literally a Band-Aid. At some point, we'll have to be ripped off and start over. Part of our circulation system is also going to auxiliary equipment. So this is a overhead line going to a heater that's on a second story. Okay, pool pumps aren't really designed to send water up to a second story. There is no circulation system in this install. It's actually a renovation that was done. And they wondered last year why their heater kept going into alarm for low flow. And strictly, it was just because there's no booster pump in this line to send water upstairs. Okay. Piping is done correctly, all PVC. Once we penetrate through the slab here and go to the heater, it changes into CPVC, which has a higher temperature rating, which is great. So around any heating element, we should go to a higher rated heat-resistant pipe, which is CPVC. The only downfall for this system is that there is no booster pump to get water up to the second floor, which is it's actually a very large room. So that slab is about 14 feet above grade, and then there's another 5 or 6 feet above that to actually go to the heater, right? So we're close to 20 feet. We're taxing on to the existing filter pump, which just can't push that water that high. Our sanitary. So the big thing for the pool sanitary is the backwash. And where does the backwash go and how is it connected? So most codes require either some means of preventing the backwash sanitary line from connecting directly to the pool line. So whether it's an air gap, which is most commonly used, or a backflow preventer, right? There's some engineered means to prevent that water from flowing. So here's a good gap, right? So on the other side of this wall is the pool equipment room. Here's the backwash lines coming from the pool equipment. However, there's a sanitary connection to the sanitary to receive the pool backwash. I'm not sure about you, but if you've ever seen backwash water come out of a pipe, it never comes out as a straight column and those lines line up, right? So in the event this wasn't captured, the day they go to backwash, they would not only flood this room, which is a storage room, but definitely flood the deck, which is just on the other side of this room. So the backwash water would have gone through the storage room, onto the pool deck, and right back and contaminated the pool. So who's responsible for coordinating items like this? Typically, there's a stop gap where the pool contractor stops, and there's supposed to be a 6-inch gap before that sanitary connection. So who's responsible for that 6-inch gap? Is it the pool contractor, your mechanical contractor, your general contractor, your consultant? Obviously, there's a bit of a gap here in this installation. The aquatic system is also connected to servicing the rest of the building, right? Our HVAC system is connected to it, our domestic water, sanitary, the deck drains, okay? All of those points are all coordination points. Who's protected by it? For example, if I have a cold climate and an outdoor pool, are my lines all heat traced? Are they insulated? A lot of high-rise buildings now have pools and amenity spaces up on the 14th, 18th, 24th floor of a building that's only open from May to September. Well, what happens throughout the rest of the year with those lines? Is there heat tracing? Is it protected from freezing? Okay. The other thing is the sanitary line itself. So this sanitary line connection, is it dedicated strictly for the pool? Or is this line at the end and the rest of the building is connected to it? So if I do a backwash during the day, do I end up flooding the change rooms? Okay. Ideally, sanitary system for the pool should be standalone. You should have a sanitary line strictly just to capture the pool backwash and pool discharge, and then a secondary sanitary system for the rest of the building for straight operation. Going back to stormwater, we talked about briefly about geotechnical, right? Is there soil ground conditions? Do we need to install a weeping bed, a weeping sump? Right? Who's making that connection? Typically, that sanitary or that storm system may be installed during construction of the building foundations and just terminate at a spot until plumbing, or building mechanical or plumbing, or even the pool contractor gets there to make those connections or tie into. Okay, so it's coordinating those items. Where does that go? Who's responsible for that excavation? Preparing the tank, that pool tank that goes in. Where does that geo? Is it sitting underneath it, on top of it? Is the groundwater, for example, I have a project in Toronto right now where the groundwater is an issue. The groundwater is basically 3 feet below the pool deck. My pool is 10 feet deep. How do I combat that groundwater issue? Okay, here's a good example of some poor installation. We've got a wet condition, right? You can see the water there, but the weeping tile is set above the pool slab. So that pool slab is sitting in water constantly. This weeping tile actually should be about 6-8 inches, right, or 200 mils below that slab. Okay, so that it gets rid of this standing water. Yes, this was after a rainstorm. Actually, it was a couple of days after a rainstorm, but obviously the water is still sitting there and not draining correctly. So actually that weeping tile, which is supposed to take the groundwater away, is dry and not doing anything. So it's just improper installation. Okay, and that's a coordination item that should be coordinated between civil, the mechanical, and pool contractor. Electrical, where's our electrical system coming from? Is it been updated, right? This is a great example where the facility wants to upgrade, but the pool is coming on basically your residential power, 200 amp service, okay? The system that they need needs 600 amps, right? Based on the large pump and large pool that they're running or that they want to go to. It's a 575 or 600 volt pump. Obviously can't draw off of a 120 service. Along with that comes our 3-phase or single phase service. And who's responsible for the power, right? Are we relying on the pool contractor to make the connections, or is there an electrical consultant or electrical contractor on board that's going to wire up and connect all our systems for us? But this often comes into into renovation facilities. When I'm renovating an existing facility and adding a pool to it, is the existing electrical sufficient to power my full renovation? Not only the building renovation that I'm doing, but if I'm adding a pool, that entire load. Emergency equipment, okay? Where is it located, especially an emergency phone and an emergency stop? Who's responsible to install it? So here's a great example of a recent project in Toronto where signs were put up, and to protect the signs, plexiglass was put over top of it. However, there's my emergency phone on the floor, and there's the jack behind the plexiglass. So how do I connect my phone through plexiglass into the jack? And ultimately, they had to cut the plexiglass, and which was, great idea to protect the signage and stuff. But how do you make that connection? Okay, the emergency stop was obviously penetrated through. This facility had 4 or 5 pools. Okay, does this emergency stop deactivate all the pools or just one? Okay, typically, doesn't matter how many bodies of water I have or how many emergency stops I have, they should all be interconnected. So if I push this emergency stop, it deactivates all pumps, not just the pool it's next to. Okay, so this is an item that, especially our emergency phone, emergency stop, we need to coordinate that with our electrician, as well as our pool contractor, to ensure that it's all tied together, and whether that's through a program, a PLC, for example, or through a switch in our electrical panel. And then as well as that is everything should be GFI protected in this system. Finishes, start and stops, who's responsible, right? What finish are we using? Are we going from a plaster pool in that upper right-hand corner, which definitely needs a little bit of TLC? Are we going to a modular pool with stainless, the reflective photo there in the middle? Or are we going to go to a vinyl product on the floors, right? And get rid of tile and rubber flooring or broom finish concrete and go to a proper finish. So regardless of what finish we're using, right? Even epoxy paint, for example, where is that start and stop? Okay, is the pool contractor responsible just to bring that finish up to this edge? And then from that edge onward is somebody else, right? Or is that pool contractor supposed to take it right across the pool deck? And in this case, in Timmins, for example, they brought it right from the pool deck and came up 6 inches on the wall, right? And through the thresholds of the door. So our start, stop coordination, so a lot of coordination between our architects, our finishing contractors, who's responsible for that, what types of finishes and terminations, right? Are we okay with just a PVC threshold strip, or do we want a proper doorway threshold? Okay, same with our plaster. Once that pool is plastered, I've got about 24 hours to fill that pool, right? Before that plaster starts drying out and cracking. And with the plaster pool, that pool needs to remain full. Otherwise, this is what happens. Our plaster does dry out, it starts to molt, right? You get patches of water that has penetrated through, starts to reappear, but the big thing is cracking. Okay, so in this repair, where's the contractor stopping, right? Are they responsible to do this tile edge, right? Or are they bringing the plaster right up and over, or are they separating it, or are they, combination of maybe replaster the floor and paint the walls, etc. All right, so that brings us almost to a close, but we're looking at, so here's some questions for you guys, right? Where are you seeing gaps in your projects, right? Are your heaters, your dehumidification, who's connecting to those items? The backwash, for example, that I showed, right? That 6-inch air gap, if you're using an air gap, is that 6-inch suddenly turning into 8 or 10 feet? The domestic water, where is it coming from? Is it protected, right? Do we have backflow prevention on that system, right? We can go even a step further and say, if I've got multiple pools, do I want to backflow prevent water from going from the lap pool to the leisure pool to the therapy pool, etc., right? So I have multiple backflow preventions, or do I just have one on my main? That electrical system, is your electrical contractor stopping at a distribution box or a disconnect that's at the other end of the complex, and your pool contractor is responsible to run conduit and wire? Some jurisdictions don't permit that. Some jurisdictions require an actual licensed electrician to even run conduit. Okay, so there's some gaps even within that realm that need to be addressed. During COVID, some projects I know have started, some have finished, some are trying to finish. Okay, what additional items have you implemented for COVID? Right, a lot of things right now being implemented are one-way traffic. Right, so having additional signage for one-way direction, entrances and exits, along with reduced capacity. So just because your pool pre-COVID had a cap of, let's say, 150 swimmers, now during COVID, is it 25 swimmers? Or based on your jurisdiction, is it maybe 10 swimmers that are only permitted? Okay, this is a big one that I see all the time. Who's generating those change orders, right, for your project? Regardless if it's a design, build, bid, build, tender process, is the owner making those changes, right? Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. We get that, right? But out of 10 change orders for a project, have they all been generated from the contractor, right? Or subcontractors? Is there something missing here? Was there a gap in the design or a gap in the coordination, or is it strictly just the general contractors and subcontractors are playing games, right? Which unfortunately does happen, but who's generating those change orders, and are they being vetted through the process correctly? Is your consultant really looking at them, or are they just signing off and away they go? Okay. So definitely some items for conversation there, some questions. Again, thank you very, very much for your time. Thanks, Katie, for allowing us to speak to you, to the group here. From coast to coast and even down into the south, which is fantastic. I'll leave our contact information up there. By all means, I know this was a very high level review. If there's something specific that you guys are dealing with, by all means, feel free to get a hold of Katie or myself and or Brittany as well. And one of us, I'm sure, will be able to help you along the way.
Thank you so much, Jamie. For those of you who haven't been on one of these webinars before, we're going to do some Q&A now. Typically, I start off with some questions that I have from listening to the session. So I do want to encourage everyone, there's no stupid questions. Pop any questions, comments, any topics you'd like covered in the chat box. We'll leave their contact information up for a few minutes, and then I'll move us over so you can see us a bit bigger. So many different things, Jamie, I want to hit on. First question I have for anybody on the call who's an aquatic manager, a programmer, a deck lead. This is something that I often wonder about. What size of project requires bringing in a consultant, or where do you say, we start to need some help? Because I see a lot of facilities PMing, GCing everything themselves, right? Where do you come in on recommending getting help?
Any size, right? So from a friend of mine, just actually down the street from me, is looking at putting in a pool in her backyard. So she's asking me about, what to look for. So really it comes down to, your backyard residential pool at $50,000 up to a multi-million-dollar complex with arenas and libraries and pools, $30, $40, $50 million projects, right? Or, you get into some of these very large YMCAs like you have in Calgary, or even, I know some people from the US, Lifetime Fitnesses, where you're talking 50, 60, $100 million projects. So it really comes down to, one, the comfort level of the ownership group. Okay. I would recommend that regardless of project and dollar size, that you have some sort of consulting team or a project manager that helps you through the course of the project and might be able to answer some of those construction or technical questions that an owner may not know.
So let's think renovation. Let's imagine I have a 25-year municipal pool and I need to do $40,000, let's say, in regrout, or I need to replace the circulation pump for $25,000. And my, management is saying, well, we're replacing like for like. Why do we need a consultant?
If you're, because you start to get into that question about the grandfather clause that you and I spoke about over the weekend. Yeah. So grandfathering, absolutely, right? You can replace this 5 horsepower pump because it burnt out, and I'm going to replace it for the exact same 5 horsepower pump. Yes, that is okay. there is no grandfather clause for health and safety. So if I have, for example, a diving board, right, that was installed 40 years ago, and my pool is, only 8 feet deep, and I've got a 1 meter board, that becomes an issue, right? Because there is no grandfather clause for the health and safety. In the event a diver does go off of that board and ends up hitting the bottom of the pool, or the incline of the hopper going from deep to shallow, it is a liability for the owner. So stuff like that, you at least want to, contact with someone who's in the aquatic industry and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Am I okay with that? Most municipalities do have a procurement bylaw. Anything over 5,000 type thing. General rule of thumb, not every municipality is that low. Some are higher, some are lower. General rule of thumb is 5,000. If it's over 5,000, then they have to go multiple bids. But at least have that conversation to say, do I really need to hire somebody, or is this straight a re and I'm okay?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm so glad you brought up the diving board example. So for those of you who might be less connected to aquatics, we had our first major legal settlement in Canada a couple years ago, upheld in Saskatchewan. I put it in the chat box. It's Beletsky versus University of Regina. $9 million settlement for a diving board, to Jamie's point, that it was grandfathered at it was okay for its grandfathering. But the FINA standard, the diving standards that we all now know for the slope of the opposite wall and the bounce and the depth, it was just at the minimum. So does that now make it obsolete? How did that impact the individual who became paralyzed diving into that basin? And the Supreme Court in Saskatchewan said that her claim was valid, amongst other things, that water was not maintained. So the makeup water was not recorded, and there was no proof of how much fresh water was added to the pool in the months preceding the incident. So there was no documentation of water levels or what that looked like operationally. So that's a huge one, right? Nobody wants to take out the diving board. Nobody wants to kill the fun. But if it's unsafe because standards have changed, who's looking at that?
And the other thing with that is you mentioned is the minimum, right? Building code, regardless of where you are or what jurisdiction you're in, building code is the minimum requirements, right? So just because, just general rule of thumb, 1 meter board requires 3 meters, that's not to say I can't make my pool 3.5 meters and give myself that extra half meter, right? So even turnover rates, rather than, code says it has to be 4 hours. Well, why design a system for exactly 4 hours? Why don't you give yourself that little bit of a buffer and turn it over every 3.5 hours? So yeah, code is base bones minimum requirement.
Well, and to speak to code, making sure that everyone's aware that codes are not updated all the time. And certainly when it comes to the swimming pool section, those sections are not updated any more frequently necessarily. So I know here in Alberta, in our building code for certain items, it specifically says in the Alberta building code, refer to the ANSI code for this item, I believe with diving boards and ladders. They have not written an Alberta specific code. They've punted it to someone else who is updating these codes more frequently. So I've put in the chat box a couple of great resources, the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code that's been under development the last few years. Texas just adopted that for new construction. Model Aquatic Health Code is a standard setting organization developed in conjunction with the Center for Disease Controls, but it's not required. And so, Jamie, in your experience, do you find clients they're wanting to do more than the existing codes? How strong are the codes in the jurisdictions you're working in?
Because of COVID, a lot of our projects that we're dealing with right now are very budget driven, right? With a lot of municipalities not having money coming in with projects, halfway through design. So being very, very budget conscious and looking at where typically one municipality and even a YMCA, for example, builds in redundancies for the systems, right? So I know Ron's on here and Ron can contest to this as well, is that a lot of their systems, because they're so dependent on people coming in that front door, is having that redundancy so that the pool doesn't close down. Yeah, there's a cost to that, right? So it's when I've got no money coming in because of pandemic, how do I mitigate and say, okay, yeah, we're gonna build it with double pumps or an extra filter that I can take a filter offline. So right now, that is the hot topic is the redundancies and the actual cost it's going to put onto the budget of the project.
I want to give a shout out to, I think this was the conference you missed, Jamie, but I did meet the lead at Volcano Bay, which is Universal Studios water park back in Orlando. I met him a number of years ago, and they were explaining to me that they literally have redundancies on every single feature of every single equipment, from pumps to controllers. It was just outrageous to think about the investment that park had made at the get-go. But smart in hindsight, when you think about bringing in 10,000 people a day to a revenue generating facility, a $50,000 pump is small peanuts when you start to contemplate, losing the wave pool in the middle of July. But not everybody has that kind of support or forethought in the budget, unfortunately.
Correct. And even going back to one of the original slides about pool piping, right? Mm-hmm. You're saving $3,000 to go from SCED 80 to SCED 40 on a average system, small system. But it's that insurance package that you're paying for now that's going to give you an extra 5-10 years, or in the event that something goes wonky and you have water hammer or freeze thaw condition, it just gives you that little bit of extra reassurance.
Well, and I do want to remind people, certainly in Canada, we do have a lot of designers, engineers, and builders who come up from the United States, and they are very qualified in their work and the projects they've completed. But often it has been my experience living in Northern Canada, where it gets very, very cold. They truly don't comprehend the depths of cold that we get. And I know I can speak to some of the air handling units I've seen in Cochrane, Alberta, in Fort McMurray. They were installed, certainly the one in Fort McMurray was installed by a group from California, who did not comprehend that it can literally get down to minus 50 Celsius for many days consecutively. And so they now literally need to erect a structure like a tent, a sprung structure to keep that unit running in the winter, because there's not outer walls built around it. There's no insulation. And so I would always recommend that people consider, the builder from California might be great on paper, great references, but do they understand Canadian climate, soil conditions, as you've mentioned, Jamie?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit, Jamie, about your experience as somebody who is coming in perhaps later in a project where the scope that was used for the RFP, the request for proposal, was maybe insufficient, or you get invited into a project later because somebody screwed up in the beginning? Where are some of the common limitations you're seeing?
I'm involved in two of those headaches right now. So sometimes what happens is it's an afterthought, especially in, for example, a high-rise condo or developments where there's an idea of a pool, but not 100% sure. So everything else gets designed and tendered based on X. And then all of a sudden at the last minute, oh, we want to put a pool in. So going backwards through that design process to say, okay, I need, a separate sanitary line, which would be ideal, right? Well, sometimes that doesn't permit, especially if the pool's up on the 18th floor. How do I, and construction's already started. How do I get another sanitary line all the way up there through somebody's unit, right? And especially with, residential development, every square inch or square millimeter of building is cost, right? If I can put that into somebody's unit versus common space, it's reclaimed cost, but common space and typically parking garages are not, right? So when I start taking away things like that, it becomes problematic. And then just going backwards through that design process of saying, okay, I need additional electrical, additional water, additional sanitary. Where's the room for all this equipment going to be? A lot of people tend to underestimate the equipment room size, and you end up with a broom closet, right? Saying, how do I fit 3 pumps, 5 filters, a chemical controller, chemicals, storage, etc., into a broom closet, right? It doesn't. It's everything gets stacks on top of each other, and then there's no thought process to after it's saying, okay, yeah, you know what, it fits, but now that filter in the back corner needs to be replaced. How do I get to it? I've got to take everything out to go get it, right? So it's that future maintenance.
Well, you're assuming it fits. How many times have we heard that the door width doesn't match the circumference of the filter, and they should have brought the filter in before they finished the walls, but nobody communicated because they thought that was a finishing project. And it's really that integration of when does this need to be done? Or, I mean, we both, I'm sure, have a million stories, but one pool I visited in the fall, beautiful facility, beautiful design, beautiful finishes, beautiful equipment. Everything was very well invested, smart, so that there would be less cost for staff time, more invested in the system. And then we discovered, as I'm there, they're commissioning the filters. They are running a little line to the floor drain for the backwash. It is not plumbed. There is nowhere for the backwash water to go.
Mm-hmm.
They've just run it to the floor to run into the drain, not understanding, the velocity and volume of water coming out of a 4-inch pipe doesn't work with a floor drain, right? Like, and not just going into it, literally just up to abutting the floor drain. Like,
yeah, and not only that, but filters. Especially some older pools. I know Mike's from Thunder Bay's on so one of their pools has an old DE, diatomaceous earth filter, where when they replace that filter or run it or do a regen on it, they actually have to open the maintenance door to actually pull the unit all the way out through the maintenance door. So they're outside. So, it's great in July and August when the weather's nice. Not so nice especially in Thunder Bay in January, February. So it's even things like that where you've got some older equipment and the processes have changed, but the room around that hasn't changed. It's how do you service that?
Well, and I think for those of you building new pools, it's also to really understand the choices that you're making. And so you're not deprived of choosing a decision. Because I think sometimes, and we're going to get in a little bit to like non-aquatic professionals and trades perspective, but they don't give the consumer or the client the choice. One of the ones that I see very often in older pools in Alberta, as well as when I worked at the University of Toronto downtown, there was not a big enough vault to evacuate draining the pool with all the lines open. You literally had to stand there and start and stop the pump or open and close the valve and gravity feed because there's just not enough clearance for that volume of water to flow into the city line. And I thought that was a U of T thing. And I've since seen it at many, many pools because the logic apparently at construction is, well, you only do this once a year. Why would we have enough sumps or automation to turn on so that there's no accidental flooding in the basement? We just expect someone to stand down there for 3 days with a sandwich and turn it on and off. Like,
which is not great, but it's okay for a planned event, right? Yes. What happens if there's an emergency? Right. Yeah. So it's Thursday morning at 9:00 and you have an emergency and you need to drain that pool. And most regulations require you to drain that pool in a maximum of 12 hours.
Yeah.
So that stop, not going to happen in 12 hours. You're flooding something, right?
Yeah, and I think it just goes back to that decision. How many people even knew at the time of construction, hey, we are choosing to save $100,000 because we want to undersize the sumps and we want to undersize the emergency flood features in this area, but we choose to do that. Many people, they're not even involved at that level, and then they're confused later that they haven't got what they want in terms of the ease with which an operator can actually run the facility, right? The demands on staff time later versus the investment up front.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit, Jamie, about why somebody like you who works explicitly on pools, only on pools, what you bring to the table that's different from my local engineer or my local architect that I might want to support as a local business, but some of the limitations on scope when they do like residences and smaller buildings in my area that are not pools?
So yeah, we deal with pools day in and day out. That's all we deal with, right? Our larger firm is an engineering firm that does mechanical and electrical, but Brittany and I are constantly in the aquatics, and that's all we deal with. There are, and I know James is on here and as an architectural firm, there are some architects out there who do fantastic jobs on pools, right? But they've also done many pools versus, your local architect, just startup firm who maybe has only done one pool in their lifetime, right? Or your engineer who's only done one pool in his lifetime. Again, not to say that they're incorrect or they're doing something wrong or misleading, but it's like going to the dentist. Do you want to go to the dentist and have a cavity filled based on someone this is their first time, or someone who's been around and has done it a few times, right? You're a drywaller. I can drywall. You might not look pretty, but I can drywall, right? So if you want, to see all your tape marks and joints and all that stuff, I'll be cheap, but it won't look pretty. So it really comes down to experience, being not necessarily well known in the industry. I know a couple of competitors and colleagues of mine who are not well known in the industry, but when they do a pool project, do it very, very well. So it's having that knowledge base and knowing that if they're out of their realm, they at least have resources to rely on, or know up front to say, hey, this is more than I'm comfortable with. You better off looking at going to somebody else, going to talk to Katie, going to talk to Jamie, whoever, right, a different architect or different engineer to aid you. So definitely when you're getting into a project, you want to make sure that whoever it is has that background and experience, has done some similar projects. Not every project's exactly the same. I wish you could, carbon copy and change the date and you're done, right? It doesn't work that way. So even training CPO courses, every single course is different. You have different audience, different groups, different questions. In general, they're all very similar, but yes, it's different every single time. So it's getting a team that you're surrounded with for your project that has done it before, and whether you set it up as they've done 4 similar projects in 5 years or 5 projects in 3 years, depending on the aggression and how you want it experience wise. There's some contractors out there who have done 1 pool in 20 years, right? Is that the guy you want? Yes, they were the lowest price, and sometimes procurement forces you to take the lowest price, but is that really the contractor you want on the team?
Well, and I think it's important too that we consider that the variety of pools now in 2021, it's no longer sufficient to say, I can do a pool, right? You might have done a 25-meter box in, a smaller municipality 20 years ago, and that was fine. But certainly the market where I'm based in Alberta, there's a huge demand for amenities such as water slides, steam rooms, and these are massive facilities built onto libraries, to high schools, to 400,000 square feet multiplexes. And so I think there's, as you mentioned earlier in the session, Jamie, there's a huge need to really look at references, talk to competitors, and also look at those facilities that you aspire to emulate or that you really like, or that you as a consumer, whether a lifeguard, a bather, or whomever, you visited and you like them. So I know for me as a consultant, I visit a lot of different pools, and you know the same thing too, Jamie. You walk into a pool and things are where you want them to be, things are where you expect them to be. The staff are able to work effectively. The hose bib is well placed, the electrical is well placed, the signage is well placed. That is an art. And I think we need to be cognizant for anybody who's involved with projects and renovations. Yes, you can't do a museum the same as a house, the same as a large auditorium or a theater. And so if your architect or your engineer can't necessarily cover all those gaps, who else can you bring to the table that can be involved in the plans without, a whole army, but can provide perspective?
Mm-hmm. And just going back to, there's some comments here in the chat. So James's question about the pool's the last thing to go in, and it's the first thing to get cut, right? When you start talking about pricing and cutbacks, because it's a big ticket item, right? All that equipment in there and day-to-day operations, it's a big ticket item, right? So yes, mm-hmm. It is. It's the last thing to go in and the first thing to come out. Okay. And then James goes on to say about, even the big firms, yes, even some of the very large architectural firms, they're not doing 10 pools a year. Some are doing more 3 a year type thing. But yes, you definitely want a pool consultant or an engineer who's done pools day in and day out, and that's their bread and butter, right? That's what they're doing.
I see Andrea's comment, and then I'll let you think about Andrus's comment, Jamie. So Andrea's saying, we have one of those brand new pretty pools with many problems. It's been closed 3 times to fix these problems, and they are still not fixing the problems. So frustrating. So I definitely, as a consultant, that's what keeps me and Jamie in business, is unfortunately people, they only see the problem that they see. They don't understand the forest for the trees. And often, for example, there's a desire to fix something that appears simple, so an expansion joint or cracking around the skimmers or just the circulation pump. instead of taking a moment to say, okay, what is this indicative of, or what else is going on? And we could go down a whole other rabbit trail of life cycling and planning. And we know that maintenance is reactive, but the reality is when you come to these, the scope is the root issue, in my opinion. People don't understand the full scope and they don't articulate it in the proposal or the bid. So then it's partially the contractor's fault for not giving you what you want, but not completely, because you didn't tell them what you need and you didn't itemize it appropriately to cover your own butt. Let's go to, or sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to comment on Andrea's comment as well. Andrea's comment as well is the so through the process, there's shop drawings, right? So if you have a traditional design, bid, build, tendering project, there's shop drawings review, right? So because again, nobody's perfect. I make mistakes. We all make mistakes, right? It's trying to minimize those costly mistakes for the owner, right? So that's why you have 5 million coordination meetings through the design process, right? But again, things fall through the holes. I thought this was going to get coordinated, and it didn't. It missed. I missed the meeting, or I was late, and it just fell through the cracks. So through the shop drawing process, that's when you start catching some of that stuff, or you should be catching some of those costly fixes, right? If you're having heater issues, the heater's taken 3 weeks to heat up the pool, and it's supposed to be designed for a 1-week heat cycle. So then you have to start going back and looking at the engineered documents to say, okay, was that effectively communicated up front? Or did somebody cheap out and say, I'm going to put in a 500,000 BTU heater versus a 5 million BTU heater and go from that 1-day heat up cycle to a 10-week heat up cycle. So, there's through that engineering process, it can be corrected through the shop drawing process and review during construction. Sometimes it does, unfortunately, cost more. And yeah, through procurement, the lowest bid is never the cheapest bid, right? Your lowest bid ends up costing you probably at the end of the project, probably more than the highest bid, right, on average. So it's trying to mitigate those through the process.
I also want to make sure everyone's aware that this is the time to have a choice and have a preference. You don't have to have the same thing as a pool down the street. There is a reason that an owner or an organization, they have a preference. So an example I can give is I was involved at a municipality as an aquatic manager. We received an insurance settlement to replace our boiler. Great. Huge amount of money to replace a huge big ticket item. I immediately said, I want 2 boilers. I want a lead and a lag. I want, options. The guy comes in to size the boiler. Oh, lady, you just have 1 boiler. You don't need 1 boiler, or you don't need 2 boilers. No, I'd like 2 boilers. There's footprint for it. There's budget for it. My boss doesn't care. I want 2, right? So you need to advocate for what you want. And if you don't have a preference, that's fine. But you also need to be aware that the boiler guy is not a pool specialist. He doesn't know what I believe to be best for the facility, and ensuring that you understand who's going after what interest, right? That I'm focused on the facility, he's focused on the sale. For whatever reason, he wants to sell me 1 instead of 2, but at the end of the day, we need 2, and we ended up with 2. Let's go to Andres's question. Jamie, what are the most crucial things to make sure are not missed during new construction? Brittany's given us a couple comments, but also Jamie, your thoughts.
Let me see what Brittany said here so I don't repeat. So value engineering, yes. Critical things missed, cut during new construction. Civil. I'm finding more and more projects now, they're skipping out on including the civil consultant all the way through the project.
Why would you need one?
Why would you need one, right? So, we're only dumping 50,000 liters or something like that, or 500,000 liters down the drain. A 2-inch line should be fine. So I think we're finding, like I said, we're finding more and more projects like that where the civil consultant is engaged at the beginning of the project, and then there's this gap through the design process and everything else, and then they're brought on at the very end when they realize, holy crap, this isn't going to work. How do I fix it, right? I have a project right now where that's happened, where the civil wasn't carried through the duration of the project, and when they backwash the pool, they flood the basement every single time. Right, and it's just because it was a renovation. The original sanitary line wasn't designed to carry the new building addition plus the pool load. So the addition gets priority for the change rooms and washrooms and renovations to the arena, etc. The pool is a last item, so it surcharges a line, and then they have to throttle it back so that they don't flood out the change rooms. And had the civil engineer been throughout that whole process, would have realized that, yeah, the existing 8-inch line that runs basically level out through the parking lot wouldn't hold the backwash of the pool, which is, it's a 50-meter competition pool, so it's over 500,000 liters.
Well, and I think some other ones to add on just this question, Jamie, we've discussed a lot over the last few years. Air handling, people don't understand what they need, as well as mechanical space, like filter rooms. I know you've said many times people don't understand what needs to fit, or safety clearance between chlorine and acid, or ventilation requirements for chlorine gas outside the buildings. Is that an area you frequently see shortchanged?
We see shortchanged on the heaters and dehumidification, right? So rather than, so for dehumidification, right, and good air quality is bringing that return or the exhaust grill from your HVAC unit down to a low level, like right to the pool deck. The closer I can get that return to the pool edge from the HVAC side, that return, the better the air quality is going to be. It gets rid of that chlorine smell, that chloramine, that buildup that you smell when you walk into a building and know there's a pool there before you even get to the pool. So it'll keep that air quality much better. A healthier environment, and a lot of times they'll cheap out rather than ducting, through the wall or ducting down, because it is, unsightly from the architect's point of view, seeing this duct work or having to fur in a corner to bring that duct down to a low level, so everything's 20 feet in the air. So your air quality up 20 feet in the air is great. Nobody's up 20 feet in the air, right? So it's getting that low level exhaust and HVAC done correctly to provide good air quality on the deck. The heater, same thing. There's projects where the heater is tied into other things, like your hot water facility, right? Your hot water plant, could be an arena, right? Your ice plant. So it's that coordination of, am I sending the pool water to the ice plant first to capture that heat, and then going to the dehumidification system, and then going to an auxiliary heat? Is there geo? Is there solar? Is there, you name it, right? There's especially with energy efficiencies these days, it's where is that pool water going, and one, who's taking it, how is it going to get there, and how is it going to get back? And then once it's there, how is it being controlled so that on the way back, I'm not exceeding 104-degree water, especially for my spas and leisure pools, right? Because that's typically what code says is the maximum is coming back is 104. So how is that protected? Do I have an alarm condition, right? Is it just a thermometer that somebody's got to read it every single day? Does it go to the building automation system? So lots of little intricate parts, even keeping it simple. And I'm going to an ice plant and a dehumidification system. Okay, great. So how's it getting there? How's it coming back? And who's controlling it?
For those of you who want to know more about air quality in the pool, because that's a very major topic in the industry right now in terms of chloramines, as Jamie mentioned, combined chlorine in the water, what are the occupational hazards associated with that air exposure? The province of BC has created a chloramine standard. Brent Miller will be here next Friday from Automated Aquatics in Edmonton, and he is a deep air quality pool nerd. So he'll be talking about all those things and breaking them down into accessible bites for those of you that want to have a better sense of kind of what's important. But I do agree with Jamie, consistently facilities that I visit, again, just kind of on the road when it's not COVID, the ventilation is not actually engineered. It's somebody with an idea that they've done ventilation in many other applications, and they don't understand the unique considerations with our higher humidity, higher temperature, and often even windows now. And windows, sunlight beaming into a warm climate, warm environment, how does that impact air quality and moisture? And there's all of that needs to be specialized. And it's whether it's somebody like Jamie that has competency in that area, but if your local person doesn't, at least you're outsourcing that specific work to a specific air engineer that has pool experience. want to mention a couple other things. We'll do a last call for questions. Please do feel free to enter those in the chat box. We want to make sure we get to those. There's no stupid questions. We're here to answer them. But one last comment I wanted to make on Andres's point about like where should we focus. I think any organization, whether they're doing a $20,000 renovation or a $2 million renovation, you really need to understand your organizational priorities for the project. So certainly budget is a concern. So we received this money, we need to do as much as possible. That's a legitimate focus. Other organizations, Jamie mentioned, some of the higher profile like Movati Fitness, a very high-end fitness club, they're going for customer value and experience and luxury, right? They're going to have a different concerns with the end product. And so I think a big thing is identifying what is our goal, right? The biggest pool we can afford with the least number of frills, the safest pool, the most efficient pool to run with the cheapest staff budget hours because we have the best equipment. What are those goals? And each organization is going to answer that question differently. An $8 million pool in Kindersley is going to look different from an $8 million pool in Toronto in terms of size and what it's trying to do. The goals are going to be different for whomever is building it. Anti-entrapment, I definitely wanted to hit on. Any other questions, enter those in the chat box. So anti-entrapment is a huge concern in our industry in North America. So anti-entrapment is ensuring that people are protecting their swimming pools, suction fittings from bathers becoming entrapped via hair or limb, body, rings on fingers. Who is responsible for that at facilities that are already open? Where do you see people ensuring that their facilities are compliant and doing it correctly, safely to size?
Okay, so the first thing is every single pool, regardless of jurisdiction, province, state, country you're in, every single body of water must have 2 drains. Okay. Each drain should be sized for 100% of the flow rates. Okay. So I know your question's about renovations, but let's take one step back. So your design engineering firm, whoever it was, whether it's an aquatic consultant or a mechanical engineer that designed it, should do the calculations based on worst condition, and that is 100% of the flow through a single drain. Okay. Then within that jurisdiction, there'll be flow rates, maximum velocity. Typically, it's 1.5 feet per second or 0.45 meters a second, depending if you're perimetric, of water going through that actual grate cover. Okay, and that's for one. And then obviously with the dual drains, you just double it up, right? And it's still that same single calculation. Some jurisdictions like Las Vegas they take that a step further where they say, okay, yes, here's the calculation, but if the pump can go to, our design is 200 gallons a minute, let's say, but if the pump can go to 500 gallons a minute, then that drain needs to be sized for, holy crap, somebody forgot to inflate a valve and my pump's running out beyond its curve and sucking at 500. So now that drain, again, depending, I know Las Vegas is like this for sure. There are some other jurisdictions which I'm sure are similar. That drain and piping associated, it has to be sized for that holy crap event of 500 gallons a minute, the worst condition the pump can do. In a renovation, again, no grandfather clause for health and safety. If you know that you have a single drain and you're operating that pool, you know that you're asking for trouble because you know that facilities now must have 2. Replacing the drains, all drains now from 99% of the manufacturers have a flow rate stamped right on them and an expiration date. So that drain is stamped with the flow rate of whatever, 100 gallons a minute, let's say. So even though I double it up and I've got 100 and 100, that does not equate to 2. I still have a single drain coverage at 100. I'm just doubling it up for the safety aspect of it, right? So if my grate replacement is stamped from the manufacturer at 100 gallons a minute for 1.5 feet per second or 0.45 meters a second, that's all that pump can do, or sorry, that grate can do. Okay, so I cannot install that on a system that is over 100 gallons a minute or whatever that flow rate needs to be. So how do I do that? Well, now you're getting into cutting a hole, excavating, bigger pipe, bigger drains, bigger grates. It becomes that snowball effect, unfortunately. Once that snowball starts rolling down that hill, it's going to start picking up additional requirements. So yes, unfortunately, if I have a single drain and I want to operate it safely, I'm going to go to 2 drains. I'm not going to undermine my pool. I may be able to go to wall inlets or wall returns, or sorry, geez, terminology, wall drains, have wall drains, and connect that system, those new drains into the existing main drain. Okay, but then my 2 new wall drains obviously have to be sized for that flow rate. Okay? And I've done that before. We're doing that project right now in the Toronto area, and previously here in my hometown of Kitchener, where single drain or the renovation and wanting to bring the pool up to code required additional drains.
Well, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is specifically in my mind. It was fresh this weekend. I was on Facebook, and I belong to Aquatic Manager and Directors Group, and I was horrified to see a post where somebody was asking basically where they could go to get the cheapest main drain covers. And there was a whole conversation that ensued from this that I think people just need to understand, whether you're a facility operator, facility manager, lifeguard, aquatic supervisor, who is doing these drain covers and who is actually scoping the work. So what Jamie has described, I do not feel qualified to start sizing drain covers, pipe size, water flow velocity. That is a specialized technique that somebody needs to be doing. You can't just do like for like when it comes to drain covers. There are supplemental safety items that you can install, electrical shutoffs, physical shutoffs, other steps you can take, but ultimately anti-entrapment is not something that you should attempt to do it yourself, in my opinion.
And a good, it's a tear jerker, but the Abigail Taylor video, right? And I know Katie, with your lifeguarding teaching and instructing from your background, for anyone who has never heard of it, go to YouTube and just make sure you got a box of Kleenex beside you, because it is a tear jerker over basically a 45-cent screw.
Yeah, and I will add that to the I'll add that to the chat box. But to Jamie's point, literally the deposition is over a 40-cent screw, and it's really unfortunate that people. But I see this myself, and Jamie, you might have seen this as well. Individuals who are concerned about cost, they're concerned about inconvenience draining the pool. They don't realize that there are underwater drills that scuba divers can bring in. That there are options. You don't always have to drain the pool. And that punting to the next shutdown is not always the way to go when it comes to these things, right? And there's been entrapments in Canada.
Yes, yeah, and even on that point, I'm having a lively discussion, let's say, with an operator who's purchasing equipment from Amazon, because they can get it Amazon Prime, they can get it delivered to their door next day or the day after. And I'm saying, sure, what about your warranty? Who's going to install it, right? Like. There's so many other things. So yes, just because I found it online for $100, where the pool contractor down the road is charging me $1,000 for it, well, there's a reason for that cost, right? So I'm not saying there's not price gouging. I'm just saying be cautious of what you're buying online, especially if you're buying a drain cover from Amazon. A lot of the products, some manufacturers don't even support online purchasing anymore. So I know Zodiac is one of them, right? So if you're purchasing a Zodiac piece of equipment, it's not direct from Zodiac, because they do not support online purchases.
Well, and I think I didn't articulate my point very well in the Facebook thread. It was one of those kind of heat of the moments, take a step back and not engage. But I think the individual was not appreciating how their question came across, and some of the replies were downright scary. So Amazon, like you mentioned, eBay. I mean, the research and development that goes into making these items safe for application in water, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for 5, 10, 15 years with high levels of chemicals, to be fair to the manufacturers, is expensive enough that they charge what they charge, right? And so are you really willing to save $50, $100? This individual was complaining about the $1,500 Aegis shield made by Neptune Benson, which is a fantastic product rated to 15 years. and he was complaining about $100 a year for $1,500 to get these units, right? And just the perspective on the liability that organizations face with those shortcuts, whether it is a injury or a fatality, is, I mean, you can't put a price on that, really. Okay, I don't think we've got any other questions. Let me just take a quick look in the chat box. Last call for questions, so we can let Jamie go. I've put a couple resources in the chat box, some additional videos. If you're not as familiar with entrapment, certainly reach out to Jamie, reach out to myself. It's something that we cover in the Certified Pool Operator course. I teach that course. Jamie also teaches that course. It's a great general background. Even if you're in a high-level manager position and you think I'm not directly involved at the pool deck, I know Jamie can agree with me that we very much value when directors come into these classes because they understand what the operators and the lifeguards need to do at the deck level. All right, well, let's say thank you so much to Jamie Lopes. Thank you so much, Brittany, in the chat box, helping out with your questions. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes and give a rundown for what's happening on our webinars later this week. So we'll say thank you to Jamie. You can head out, Jamie, exit without ending. And I'm going to give a short rundown, kind of what's coming up in our other webinars this week. All right, so thanks so much, everyone who's joined us. This is our last call for the prize as well. So if you are interested, we've got Water ID. Germany has donated 3 water test kits. That competition will be closing at the end of the webinar in the next 10 minutes. So hop on over to Facebook if you are interested in being eligible to win one of those test kits. They retail for about $425 Canadian, $350 US. All you have to do is find the review at the top of the Facebook page for today and comment what would excite you about this test kit, as it may be a test kit that you haven't used before. So coming up for the rest of this week, today's session is now completed. Tomorrow night, Tuesday, March 16th, we have our weekly social that's hosted by Aqua Swim Academy as a part of the POOLaide webinar series. So this is a free event on Zoom. It allows you to get to know other individuals who have been attending these POOLaide webinars. We have games, we have prizes. Last week we had a cocktail hour. So really fun off-the-clock opportunity to get to meet other aquatic professionals across North America. As you've seen from the webinar today, we've had people from coast to coast in Canada and the United States. And I know it's really nice. I know, speaking for myself, that connection of seeing people that I would normally see on the road or at pools or in leadership classes, in-person classes, it's just not the same when I'm broadcasting from my house, right, by myself. So come on out tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Mountain or 7 p.m. Eastern if you'd like to join us. We do ask that you pre-register for free, just so we have a sense of how many people might be coming out. And then we can break out into breakout rooms for different conversations or topics, depending on how many people come out. Wednesday this week, we have the customer service session with Josh Koch from Strathcona County, which is Sherwood Park, Alberta, Emerald Hills, Millennium Place, Kinsman Leisure Center. Josh is going to be talking about customer service techniques, and it's not specifically COVID. A lot of the topics we're doing for the 2021 POOLaide webinars are foundational blocks of knowledge that would be appropriate for any aquatic professional, whether they're a lifeguard hoping to make a transition to shift supervisor, or even those of you with experience and large staff teams. What are some core concepts, some core webinars that maybe you can replay in the future for in-service or assign to new staff? So I'm really excited to hear what Josh has prepared. I've heard some versions of some of this content in the past, and it really, really resonated with me. He's a super engaging presenter, really friendly, outgoing personality that I think you'll really enjoy. Sherwood Park, if you're not familiar, is just east of Edmonton and has one of the largest swimming programs in Alberta by volume in terms of population. You know, to the tune of at least 5 or 6 years ago, it was 15,000 lessons per semester, was significant. And then coming up on Friday, we do have business lessons from outside of aquatics. Pam Wright will be here talking about She is a vice president at Adobe, the software company. She's based in London, England, originally from Ottawa, Ontario, and talking about business lessons that she's learned as she's worked her way up in a large international organization. She's worked in San Jose, California. She's worked in Australia. She's worked in Asia. She's worked in London, all for Adobe. And so what are some perspectives that we can bring to aquatics from other industries? I find we sometimes get too myopic and too focused on how we do things just in recreation, just in pools. And it's important to remember at the end of this pandemic that we also put ourselves and our careers first, in addition to our facilities. So I couldn't tell you how many aquatic professionals I've talked to that have been very tired the last year, doing more with less, constantly shifting programming, directives, all of that jazz, and just really want to bring this back to how can we focus on business lessons that improve us as people, as professionals, and that in turn will also help to improve our facilities. I haven't mentioned on Wednesday later this week, I'll put this up on our Facebook page as well as on our Instagram page. This is a last minute addition, but I will be doing a Facebook Live on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Eastern with Jennifer Hayes from the Hayes Group. Hayes Group, you might be familiar with, is an HR recruiting organization, an employment organization in the US. Jenny and I went to graduate school together, and she's been a recruiter now for over a decade. She's going to be talking about fit over function and basic HR strategies right now for some of you who might be out of work or looking at switching positions, changing careers. We recognize that 2021 is still a very difficult employment year for a lot of us. And so Jenny is just a wealth of information when it comes to kind of what's going out and happening right now with employment, what that looks like in terms of, we're not going to be talking about resumes and LinkedIn, but it's just more of a general conversation about, kind of things to be aware of, and just, I think, a really, really great conversation. I know her quite well, so it's going to be a lot of fun. So that is a full week on top of your regular job, or on top of my regular job, my regular client work. So thank you so much for joining me today. It is still Monday, Monday, March 15th. I am Katie Crysdale. Thank you for staying on as long as you did. Thank you again to Jamie and Brittany. Really appreciated the information that they were able to share. They're both based in Ontario at Aquatic Design and Engineering, which is a division of DEI and Associates. Pretty easy to find both of them online. You can also find Jamie's contact information directly on the PowerPoint slides, which are on the show notes pinned in the chat box. So you can go ahead and download those slides if they are of benefit to you. Grab Jamie's contact information and reach out to them in the future if you need any assistance. He's very, very giving of his time and information. So you don't have to worry that, it's a $9 per minute 1-800 number. He is very, very giving initially. And then, as any consultant would appreciate, once a contract is signed, it's really easy to be even more helpful. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Stay connected with us on social if you want the most up-to-date information about what's going on. I hope to see you at our sessions either on Wednesday or Friday, or we have the social tomorrow, which is Tuesday, or the Facebook Live. I'll make sure that's advertised on our social for Wednesday afternoon. That's when Jenny happened to be available. So thanks so much, you guys. Have a great rest of your day.